Maya Johnson was having one of those days where nothing seemed to go right. Her alarm didn't go off, the hot water ran out halfway through her shower, and her ride to the airport canceled at the last minute. Now, as she rushed through the crowded terminal, her phone showed she had exactly 27 minutes to reach her gate before boarding closed. Just breathe, she whispered to herself, adjusting the heavy carry-on bag that dug into her shoulder. The weight of it made her arms ache, but there was no way she was checking it. Not with everything inside. Maya was a 28-year-old medical resident, currently in her second year at Boston General Hospital. Her schedule was grueling, her sleep pattern non-existent, and today marked the first vacation day she'd taken in months. There was no way she was missing this flight home to Atlanta. Her mother's surprise 60th birthday celebration was tomorrow, and Maya had promised her sister Lisa she would be there to help with the final preparations. The bag she carried held carefully wrapped gifts she'd spent months collecting: a vintage record of her mother's favorite jazz album, a handmade quilt featuring family photos, and a special gift she couldn't even think about without smiling. That particular item was the reason her bag weighed as much as a small child. As Maya finally reached her gate, she could see they had already started the boarding process. Groups 1 and 2 had already gone through, and they were calling for Group 3. She glanced down at her boarding pass, Group 4. At least she hadn't missed it. Maya took a moment to catch her breath, wiping sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand. The terminal was overheated, packed with travelers heading home for the weekend. She shifted the heavy bag again, wincing as the strap cut deeper into her shoulder. Calling all passengers in Group 4, please proceed to the gate for boarding. Maya moved forward with the crowd, fishing out her ID and boarding pass. When she finally made it to the front of the line, the gate agent smiled at her. "Cutting it close today, aren't we?" the woman said kindly, scanning Maya's pass. "You have no idea," Maya replied with a tired laugh. "Is the flight full?" "Packed to the gills. Holiday weekend." The agent handed back her documents. "Have a good flight." Maya thanked her and began the slow shuffle down the jetway. By the time she reached the aircraft door, her arms were trembling from the weight of her bag. She'd forgotten how heavy it was when she packed it that morning, and now she was paying the price. Derek Chen stood at the aircraft door, welcoming passengers with a warm smile that didn't betray how long he'd been on his feet. At 32, he'd been working as a flight attendant for Sky National Airlines for just over 7 years, and he genuinely loved his job. He enjoyed meeting new people every day, helping them feel comfortable, and yes, even dealing with the occasional difficult passenger. "Welcome aboard," he said as Maya approached the door. His practiced eye immediately noted her strained expression and the way she was struggling with her carry-on. "Can I help you with that bag?" Maya hesitated. She wasn't used to accepting help, especially from strangers, but her shoulder was on fire, and the thought of trying to lift the bag into the overhead bin made her want to cry. "That would be amazing. Thank you," she said gratefully, carefully handing over her precious cargo. Derek's eyebrows shot up as he took the bag from her. It was significantly heavier than he'd expected. "Wow, what do you have in here, Rox?" he joked, then immediately regretted it when he saw Maya's face fall slightly. "Sorry, just flight attendant humor. Where are you seated today?" 24C, Maya replied, showing him her boarding pass. Derek nodded. "Middle seat back of the plane, let me get you settled." He led the way down the narrow aisle, nodding and smiling at passengers who were already seated. The plane was nearly full, with people stuffing bags into overhead compartments and squeezing past each other to reach their seats. Derek moved efficiently, helping Maya navigate through the crowd. When they reached row 24, Derek lifted Maya's bag with practiced ease, despite its weight, and secured it in the overhead bin. "There you go," he said, stepping back to let Maya into her row. An older man sat in the window seat, already dozing against the wall, and the aisle seat was still empty. "Thank you so much," Maya said, sliding into the middle seat. "I don't think I could have managed that on my own." "No problem at all," Derek replied. "That's quite a heavy bag for a weekend trip." Maya smiled, a hint of mischief in her eyes. "It's for my mom's birthday. I've got some special gifts in there." Must be something pretty special to weigh that much, Derek commented, curious despite himself. Maya nodded but didn't elaborate. There was something about the way she guarded the information that made Derek even more intrigued. Well, if you need anything during the flight, just press the call button. I'll be taking care of this section today. As Derek moved back toward the front of the plane, he made a mental note to check on Maya later. Something about her, maybe the determination in her eyes or the gentle way she spoke, had caught his attention. In his years as a flight attendant, he'd developed a good sense for people, and Maya struck him as someone with an interesting story. The remaining passengers boarded, and soon the aisle seat next to Maya was filled by a businessman who immediately pulled out his laptop and began typing furiously. Maya settled in, placing her small purse under the seat in front of her. She pulled out her phone to send a quick text to her sister. On the plane. Should land at 4:15 if we're on time. Don't tell Mom. Lisa responded almost immediately. Dad's been asking where you put it before you left. I covered for you, but he's suspicious. Maya smiled to herself. Her father, James Johnson, wasn't easy to fool. As a Navy SEAL with 25 years of service, he had an almost supernatural ability to sense when something wasn't quite right. But this time, Maya was confident her secret was safe. Her father had no idea she'd borrowed his most prized possession, his Silver Star medal, to have it professionally restored and mounted for her mother's birthday gift. The medal was safely wrapped in layers of protective material inside her carry-on, along with the custom display case she'd had made. It had cost a small fortune, but Maya knew it would be worth every penny to see her mother's face when she opened it. The captain's voice came over the intercom announcing their imminent departure and the flight time to Atlanta, 2 hours and 20 minutes. Maya settled back in her seat as the safety demonstration began. Despite her exhaustion, excitement bubbled up inside her. In just a few hours, she would be home with her family, preparing for what promised to be an unforgettable celebration. As the plane began to taxi toward the runway, Maya noticed Derek moving through the cabin, checking that seatbelts were fastened and bags were properly stowed. When he passed her row, he gave her a quick smile that she returned gratefully. There was something reassuring about his presence, a steadiness that reminded her of her father. The plane gathered speed and lifted into the air. Maya watched through the small window as Boston grew smaller beneath them. The past few years of her residency had been challenging in ways she hadn't anticipated. The long hours, the emotional toll of caring for patients, the constant pressure to perform, all of it had tested her in ways medical school never had. But she'd persevered, just as her father had taught her. Johnsons don't quit, he would say whenever she called home, exhausted and doubting herself. It was the same motto he'd lived by throughout his military career, through deployments and injuries and the hardships of being away from his family for months at a time. Once they reached cruising altitude, Derek began the beverage service. When he reached Maya's row, he leaned down slightly. Can I get you anything to drink? He asked. Just water, please, Maya replied. As Derek handed her the cup and napkin, he noticed the medical journal she'd pulled from her purse. Are you a doctor? He asked. Maya nodded. A resident, actually, 2nd year at Boston General. Impressive, Derek said sincerely. What's your specialty? Emergency medicine, Maya replied, a hint of pride in her voice. Derek's eyes lit up with interest. That must be intense. I was a Navy corpsman before I became a flight attendant. This caught Maya's attention. Really? My dad is in the Navy. He's a SEAL. Derek's eyebrows rose in respect. No kidding? That's seriously impressive. SEALs are in a league of their own. For the first time since boarding, Maya felt herself truly relax. There was something comforting about this coincidental connection, this thin thread linking her to home even while she was suspended 30,000 feet in the air. I'm heading home for my mom's birthday, she found herself explaining. It's a surprise party. She thinks I couldn't get the time off work. Derek smiled warmly. She's going to be thrilled to see you. Is your dad going to be there too? Maya's smile faltered slightly. That's the plan. He's supposed to be on leave, but with his job, Plans change sometimes. The unspoken reality of military family life hung between them. The missed birthdays, the empty chairs at holiday tables, the constant uncertainty. Derek nodded in understanding. "Well," he said, "if any seats open up in a more comfortable section, I'll let you know. Least I can do for a fellow Navy family member." As Derek continued down the aisle with his beverage cart, Maya settled back in her seat, feeling a little lighter. The flight to Atlanta suddenly seemed shorter. Soon, she would be home, surrounded by family, celebrating their special day. And if all went according to plan, she would give her parents a gift that symbolized not just her father's bravery, but the love and sacrifice that had defined their family for as long as she could remember. Little did she know that her carefully laid plans were about to take an unexpected turn, one that would begin with a simple act of kindness from a flight attendant who had lifted her heavy bag. The story of how Commander James Johnson's Silver Star Medal came to be in Maya's carry-on bag began 28 years ago on a warm summer evening when James first met Olivia Taylor at a friend's barbecue in San Diego. James was 23 then, fresh out of Bud S training, and prouder than he'd ever been to wear the Navy SEAL trident. Olivia was 22, a bright-eyed kindergarten teacher with dreams bigger than the California sky. They weren't supposed to meet that day. James had almost skipped the barbecue to catch up on sleep after a grueling training exercise, and Olivia had only attended because her roommate had dragged her along. But fate has a funny way of working, and when James accidentally spilled his drink on Olivia's white sundress, their lives became forever intertwined. Instead of getting angry, Olivia had laughed, a sound so genuine and warm that James knew right then he wanted to hear it every day for the rest of his life. They dated for 3 years, building a relationship strong enough to withstand James's increasing deployments. When he finally proposed, it wasn't with a diamond ring, though that came later. Instead, he offered her his Silver Star Medal, awarded for valor during a classified operation in South America. "This is the thing I'm most proud of earning," he told her, his voice thick with emotion. "But I'd give it up in a heartbeat for you. I want you to keep it when I'm away, so you'll always know I'm coming back for it, and for you." Olivia had cried then, understanding the significance of what he was offering. The medal wasn't just metal and ribbon. It was a piece of his soul, a symbol of his courage and his promise to always find his way home to her. They were married a month later, in a small ceremony with close friends and family. Olivia wore a simple white dress and James wore his dress whites. When they exchanged rings, Olivia surprised James by pinning the silver star back on his chest. "This belongs here," she said. "On the heart of the bravest man I know. I don't need to hold it to know you'll come back to me." From that day forward, the Silver Star became more than just a military decoration in their home. It became a symbol of their commitment, a tangible reminder of the sacrifices they both made for James's service. When their first child, Lisa, was born, James was deployed overseas. Olivia placed the medal in the baby's tiny hand and took a photo, which she sent to James with the caption, "Your girls are waiting for you." When Maya came along 3 years later, the tradition continued. As the girls grew up, they came to understand what the medal represented, not just their father's bravery, but the strength of their parents' bond. The Johnson family moved frequently, as military families often do. From San Diego to Virginia, from Hawaii to Florida, they created homes wherever the Navy sent them. Through it all, the Silver Star remained a constant, displayed prominently in a simple wooden case in whatever house they lived in. When the girls were young, James would sometimes take down the medal and tell them stories, not of combat or danger, but of the friends he'd made, the places he'd seen, the people he'd helped. He taught them that courage wasn't about fearlessness, but about doing what was right even when you were afraid. "This medal doesn't make me special," he would tell them. "It just means I was doing my job on a day when someone was watching." As Maya and Lisa grew older, they began to understand more about their father's work. They learned to recognize the signs of an upcoming deployment, the late-night phone calls, the extra-long hugs, the way their mother's smile would tighten around the edges when their father packed his gear. They also learned the unique anxiety of having a parent in harm's way, They became experts at reading between the lines of carefully worded letters and emails. They knew that "things are busy here" often meant operations had intensified, and "I'm getting plenty of rest" usually indicated the opposite. On Maya's 16th birthday, James had been deployed for 7 months, the longest he'd ever been away. The family hadn't heard from him in 3 weeks. Not unusual given the nature of his work, but still worrying. When the doorbell rang that afternoon, Olivia's face had gone pale. A doorbell during a deployment was every military spouse's nightmare. But it wasn't a notification team at the door. It was James, still in his combat fatigues, exhausted but smiling. He'd pulled every string, called in every favor to make it home for just 24 hours before having to return to his unit. That night, after the cake had been eaten and the presents opened, James had taken Maya aside and showed her the silver star. "When I was in a really tough spot this deployment, thinking about this medal, about what it means to our family, kept me going," he told her. "Sometimes courage isn't about what you do in the moment. Sometimes it's about remembering who you're coming home to." Now, as Maya sat on the plane heading to Atlanta, those words echoed in her mind. The medal nestled in her carry-on represented so much more than military achievement. It was her family's heart, a physical manifestation of the love and commitment that had sustained them through decades of service. The plan to have it restored and mounted had come to Maya 6 months ago, when she'd visited her parents during a rare weekend off from the hospital. She'd noticed the wooden display case was showing its age. The hinges were loose, and the velvet lining had begun to fade. The medal itself, while still beautiful, had tarnished slightly over the years. Maya had carefully asked her mother if she could take the medal to have the case repaired as a surprise for her father. Olivia had hesitated, knowing how important the medal was to James, but ultimately agreed. They decided not to tell James, instead concocting a story about the case being taken to a local craftsman for minor repairs. What James didn't know was that Maya had taken the medal to a specialized restoration expert in Boston, who had carefully cleaned and preserved it without diminishing its history. She had then commissioned a custom display case, handcrafted from oak harvested from the grounds of the Naval Academy. The interior was lined with blue velvet, and a small engraved plate told the story of the medal's journey. From battlefield, honor to family heirloom. The total cost had been more than Maya could really afford on a resident's salary, but she hadn't hesitated. After all the sacrifices her parents had made over the years, the missed holidays, the worried nights, the brave faces, this felt like a small token of gratitude. As the plane hit a patch of turbulence, Maya's thoughts returned to the present. The fasten seatbelt sign dinged on, and Derek's voice came over the intercom, calmly asking passengers to return to their seats. Maya glanced at her watch. They were about halfway to Atlanta now. She wondered if her father was home yet. His last email, sent 3 days ago, had confirmed he'd be arriving today. Barring any last-minute changes to his orders, military plans were always written in pencil, never in pen. The businessman next to Maya had finally closed his laptop and was now flipping through the in-flight magazine. On her other side, the older man still dozed peacefully. Maya pulled out her phone and scrolled through the photos she'd taken of the restored medal and its new case, making sure not to let her neighbors see the screen. The surprise had to remain intact. She couldn't wait to see her mother's face when she opened the gift tomorrow. Olivia Johnson had spent nearly 30 years supporting her husband's career, raising 2 daughters largely on her own, moving households across the country, and facing the unique challenges that came with being married to a Navy SEAL. Her 60th birthday deserved to be special. As Maya put her phone away, Derek appeared in the aisle with the beverage cart for a second service. "How are you doing?" he asked quietly, mindful of the sleeping passenger. "Can I get you anything?" "I'm good, thanks," Maya replied. "How much longer until we land?" "About an hour," Derek said. "We're making good time. Weather in Atlanta looks clear." He hesitated, then added, "I found an empty seat in the exit row if you'd like to move. Might be more comfortable for the rest of the flight." Maya considered the offer. The middle seat was cramped and her legs were starting to stiffen. But moving would mean retrieving her carry-on, and the thought of handling the heavy bag again was unappealing. "That's really kind of you," she said, "but I think I'll stay put. We don't have too much longer." Derek nodded in understanding. "No problem, let me know if you change your mind." As he moved on to the next row, Maya found herself wondering about his time as a Navy corpsman. Had he served with SEALs like her father? Had he seen combat? Had he treated wounded soldiers and sent them home to families like hers? These were questions she wanted to ask, but felt too personal for a brief airplane conversation. The flight continued without incident. Maya dozed off briefly, waking when the captain announced they were beginning their descent into Atlanta. Looking out the window past her sleeping neighbor, she could see the city sprawling below them, bathed in late afternoon sunshine. Somewhere, down there, her family was waiting, unaware that in Maya's bag was a piece of their shared history, lovingly restored and ready to take its place back at the center of their home. As the plane touched down with a gentle bump, Maya felt a flutter of excitement in her stomach. She was almost there, almost home. Derek's voice came over the intercom, welcoming them to Atlanta. The temperature was 82 degrees, and the local time was 4:23 p.m. Passengers were reminded to check their seating areas for personal belongings before deplaning. Maya waited patiently as the seatbelt sign turned off, and people began the familiar rush to retrieve bags and exit the aircraft. The businessman next to her immediately stood up, pulling his briefcase from under the seat and joining the queue in the aisle. The older man by the window finally woke up, looking around with mild confusion. "Are we here already?" he asked Maya. "Just landed," she confirmed with a smile. Derek appeared at their row, helping the older gentleman with his small bag from the overhead bin. Then he reached for Maya's carry-on. "Let me get that for you," he said. "Thank you," Maya said gratefully. "But be careful, it's heavy, I remember," Derek finished with a smile. He lifted the bag with practiced ease, but Maya noticed the slight strain in his forearms as he handled it. "Would you like me to carry it off the plane for you?" Maya hesitated. The offer was tempting. Her shoulders still ached from carrying the bag earlier, but she felt bad about putting him out. "That's okay," she said. "I can manage from here." "It's no trouble," Derek insisted. "I'm heading toward the front anyway." Maya relented with a grateful smile. "In that case, thank you, I really appreciate it." As they waited for the line of departing passengers to move forward, Derek asked, "Is someone picking you up from the airport?" "My sister," Maya replied. "She's in on the surprise for my mom." Derek nodded. "And your dad? The SEAL? Will he be there too?" "He should be," Maya said, a hint of uncertainty in her voice. "He was supposed to get home today from his deployment. But you know how it is with the military, nothing's certain until it happens." Something flickered in Derek's eyes. Understanding, perhaps, or a shared knowledge of the unpredictability of service life. "Well, I hope he made it," Derek said sincerely. Family reunions are special. Little did either of them know just how special this particular reunion would turn out to be, or that the heavy bag being carried off the plane would soon become the catalyst for an extraordinary connection between two strangers linked by service, sacrifice, and a Silver Star medal that represented both. The Atlanta airport buzzed with the usual chaos of a Friday afternoon. Travelers rushed in all directions, families reunited with squeals and hugs, and airline staff navigated the crowds with practiced efficiency. Maya followed the stream of passengers down the jetway, Derek walking just ahead of her with her heavy bag. "I can take it from here," Maya offered as they reached the gate area. "You've gone above and beyond already." Derek shook his head with a friendly smile. "I'm heading this way anyway. The crew break room is near baggage claim. Besides, I meant what I said about Navy families looking out for each other." Maya felt a rush of gratitude. After a long shift at the hospital and the stress of nearly missing her flight, Derek's kindness was a welcome respite. They walked together through the terminal, making small talk about Atlanta and the upcoming weekend. "So your mom has no idea you're coming?" Derek asked. "None," Maya confirmed with a grin. "My sister Lisa and I have been planning this for months. Mom thinks I couldn't get time off from the hospital." "And the big party is tomorrow?" "Yes, at our family home. Lisa's been coordinating everything. Food, decorations, guests. All I had to do was show up. Maya paused, then added, "And bring the special gift." Derek's curiosity was piqued again. "You still haven't told me what's in this bag that makes it weigh so much." Maya hesitated. The medal and its story were deeply personal, but there was something about Derek, perhaps his connection to the Navy, that made her want to share. "It's my dad's silver star," she said finally. "I had it restored and mounted in a custom display case as a gift for my mom." Derek's eyes widened with respect. "A silver star? Wow. Your dad must be quite a man." "He is," Maya said simply, a hint of pride in her voice. They had reached a less crowded area of the terminal when Derek's phone chimed with a text message. He shifted Maya's bag to one hand while reaching for his phone with the other. The slight adjustment in his grip caused the bag to slip from his grasp. Time seemed to slow as Maya watched her precious cargo tumble to the floor. The bag landed with a dull thud, then tipped onto its side. She lunged forward, heart pounding, but it was too late. "I'm so sorry," Derek exclaimed, immediately kneeling to retrieve the fallen bag. "Is everything okay? I hope nothing broke." Maya knelt beside him, hands trembling slightly as she reached for the bag. "It should be fine. I wrapped it really well with lots of padding." But as Derek lifted the bag, both of them heard it, the unmistakable sound of something shifting inside, followed by a faint metallic clink. Maya's stomach dropped. She quickly unzipped the bag, pushing aside clothes and smaller wrapped gifts to reach the carefully packaged box at the bottom. The wrapping paper had torn slightly in the fall, and through the tear, she could see that the clasp on the display case had come undone. "I need to check it," she said, her voice tight with worry. She looked around for somewhere to set the bag down properly. Derek understood immediately. "There's a seating area just around the corner. Let's go there." They found an empty row of seats away from the main flow of traffic. Maya placed the bag on a chair and carefully removed the damaged package. The beautiful oak display case had survived the fall without a scratch, but as she feared, the clasp had opened and the interior contents had shifted. With gentle hands, she opened the case fully. The blue velvet lining was intact, as was the engraved plate, but the metal itself had come loose from its mounting. Maya lifted it carefully, examining it for damage. The silver star gleamed under the airport lights, its five-pointed star and blue center seemingly unharmed. The ribbon, red with white stripes, showed no signs of tearing. Maya breathed a sigh of relief. "It looks okay," she said, turning the metal over to check the back. That's when Derek saw it. The name engraved on the back of the metal. Commander, James A. Johnson. Derek froze, his eyes fixed on the name. It couldn't be. And yet, "Your father," he said slowly, "is Commander James Johnson, Navy SEAL Team 6? Maya looked up, surprised by the intensity in Derek's voice. "Yes. Do you know him?" Derek stared at the metal in Maya's hands, his mind racing back through time to a dark night in a distant desert, to the sound of gunfire and shouted commands, to a moment when he thought his life was about to end. "I more than know him," Derek said quietly. "I think he saved my life." Maya's eyes widened. "What? When? How?" Derek sat down heavily in the chair beside her, his gaze never leaving the metal. "It was about 7 years ago. I was a Navy corpsman attached to a Marine unit in Afghanistan. We were ambushed during a night patrol. 3 Marines were hit badly. I was trying to stabilize them when we came under heavy fire again." He paused, the memories washing over him with surprising clarity. "We were pinned down, no air support available, running low on ammo. Then, out of nowhere, a SEAL team appeared. They created a perimeter around us, gave us cover to treat the wounded, and prepped them for evacuation." Derek looked up at Maya, his eyes reflecting the gravity of that night. Their commander was a tall man who moved like a shadow. He organized the entire extraction, even carried one of the wounded Marines himself when the guy's buddy got hit. I never saw his face clearly, it was dark and he was wearing tactical gear. But I heard one of his team call him Commander Johnson. Maya sat perfectly still, absorbing Derek's words. She'd grown up hearing vague outlines of her father's missions, the few details he was allowed to share, but never anything specific like this. James Johnson didn't talk about the lives he'd saved or the dangers he'd faced. He simply did his job, came home when he could, and loved his family fiercely. "That sounds like Dad," she said softly. "He wouldn't talk about something like that, even if we asked." Derek nodded in understanding. "That's how the best ones are. They don't do it for recognition." He looked again at the silver star in Maya's hands. "Was that medal from that operation? The one in Afghanistan?" Maya shook her head. "No, he received this much earlier, before I was born. It was for an operation in South America in the 90s. The details are classified." She carefully placed the medal back in its mounting, ensuring it was secure this time. As she closed the display case, she noticed Derek's hands were trembling slightly. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. Derek took a deep breath. "Yeah, it's a lot to process. Meeting the daughter of the man who saved my life, holding his silver star. It feels like more than coincidence, you know?" Maya did know. Growing up in a military family, she'd come to recognize the invisible threads that connected service members across time and distance. The brotherhood and sisterhood forged in the crucible of service created bonds that defied ordinary explanation. "Life has a funny way of bringing people together sometimes," she said. Derek helped her rewrap the display case and secure it properly in her bag. This time, he handled it with even greater care, as if its contents were infinitely more precious, now that he understood their significance. "I wish I could thank him," Derek said as they resumed their walk toward the baggage claim area. "I never got the chance that night. Everything happened so fast, and by morning the SEAL team was gone." "Well," Maya said with a smile, "if all goes according to plan, he should be at my mom's party tomorrow. You could come if you want. I'm sure he'd remember you." The invitation surprised them both. Maya hadn't planned to invite a stranger to her mother's birthday celebration, but something about Derek's connection to her father made it seem right. Derek looked genuinely touched by the offer. "That's incredibly kind of you, but I wouldn't want to intrude on a family occasion." "You wouldn't be intruding," Maya assured him. "Not after what you've told me. Besides, it would make the gift even more special if Mom and Dad could meet someone whose life Dad impacted." Derek considered the invitation. His flight schedule would allow it. He had a 24-hour layover in Atlanta before his next assignment, and the opportunity to thank Commander Johnson in person was too meaningful to pass up. "If you're sure it wouldn't be an imposition, I'd be honored," he said finally. Maya smiled, already imagining her parents' reactions. Her mother would be thrilled by the unexpected connection, and her father, well, James Johnson wasn't an emotional man, but meeting someone he'd helped save would surely move even him. They exchanged phone numbers, and Maya gave Derek the address of her parents' home in the suburbs, along with the time of the party. As they approached the baggage claim area, Maya spotted her sister Lisa waiting near the exit, scanning the crowd anxiously. "There's my sister," Maya said, waving to catch Lisa's attention. Lisa's face lit up when she saw Maya. She rushed forward, enveloping her in a tight hug. "You made it," Lisa exclaimed. "I was starting to worry. Your flight landed almost half an hour ago." "Sorry," Maya said. "We got held up." She turned to introduce Derek, but he had already stepped discreetly aside, giving the sisters space for their reunion. "Lisa, this is Derek. He's a flight attendant who helped me with my bag and it turns out has a connection to Dad." Lisa looked at Derek with curiosity. "A connection to Dad? What kind of connection?" Before Derek could answer, Maya interjected, "It's a long story. I'll fill you in on the drive home." To Derek, she added, "Thank you again for all your help. We'll see you tomorrow?" Derek nodded. "I'll be there. It was truly a pleasure meeting you, Maya." He extended his hand to Lisa. "And nice to meet you too, Lisa. I look forward to seeing you both tomorrow." As Derek walked away, Lisa turned to Maya with raised eyebrows. "Okay, what was that about? And why is a random flight attendant coming to Mom's party?" Maya picked up her bag, feeling the weight of its contents with new appreciation. Like I said, it's a long story, but I think it's going to make tomorrow even more special than we planned. Lisa took the bag from Maya, surprised by its heft. Is the medal in here? Is it safe? It is now, Maya said, thinking of the strange twist of fate that had led to her bag falling in the airport. If it hadn't fallen, Derek might never have seen the medal or recognized her father's name. Some accidents, it seemed, were meant to happen. As they walked to the parking garage, Maya filled Lisa in on the extraordinary coincidence: how Derek had been a corpsman in Afghanistan, how their father's SEAL team had saved him and wounded Marines during an ambush, and how neither had known of the connection until the bag fell and revealed the medal. Lisa listened with growing amazement. "That's incredible," she said when Maya finished. "Wait until Dad hears about this." "Is he home?" Maya asked eagerly. "His last email said he'd be arriving today, but you know how these things can change." Lisa's face broke into a wide smile. "He got in this morning. He's at home with Mom right now, helping her prepare for a small dinner party, which is what she thinks is happening tonight. She has no idea about the big surprise tomorrow or that you're here." Maya felt a surge of joy and relief. Her father had made it home safely, and all the pieces of their surprise were falling into place. The restored medal, the reunion with Derek, the birthday celebration, it was all coming together perfectly. As they reached Lisa's car and loaded Maya's bag into the trunk, neither sister could have anticipated just how extraordinary the next day would be, or how the chance meeting with a flight attendant would create a moment their family would never forget. Derek, meanwhile, walked through the airport in a daze, still processing the incredible encounter. In his 7 years as a flight attendant, he'd met countless people, had thousands of brief interactions that faded from memory as soon as the flight ended. But meeting Maya Johnson and discovering her connection to the man who had saved his life was something entirely different. He thought about the Silver Star medal gleaming in its velvet case. It represented not just Commander Johnson's valor, but a chain of events that had led to this moment. If Johnson hadn't been the kind of man who earned such medals, if he hadn't led that mission in Afghanistan, if Derek hadn't become a flight attendant after leaving the Navy, if he hadn't been assigned to today's flight from Boston to Atlanta, any break in that chain would have prevented their paths from crossing. Tomorrow, Derek would finally have the chance to say thank you to Commander Johnson. It was a gift he never expected to receive, delivered through a seemingly random act of kindness, helping a passenger with a heavy bag. Sometimes, Derek reflected, the weight we carry contains more than we know. The Johnson family home sat on a quiet street in a suburb outside Atlanta, a 2-story brick house with white shutters and a wide front porch. It was the first permanent home James and Olivia had purchased after decades of military housing, chosen specifically for their retirement years. After a lifetime of moving, they had finally put down roots. As Lisa pulled into the driveway, Maya felt a familiar flutter of excitement. No matter how old she got or how established her life became in Boston, coming home still filled her with a sense of peace she found nowhere else. "Remember, it's supposed to be a surprise," Lisa whispered as they approached the front door. "Mom thinks I just went to pick up some last-minute party supplies." Maya nodded, positioning herself slightly behind her sister. They had decided she would hide until Lisa created a distraction, then make her entrance for maximum surprise effect. Lisa unlocked the door and called out, "Mom, Dad, I'm back." The sisters could hear movement from the kitchen, the clatter of dishes, the low murmur of conversation, the faint sound of jazz music playing in the background. Their mother's voice floated down the hallway. "We're in the kitchen, honey. Did you find everything you needed?" Lisa winked at Maya and motioned for her to wait in the living room while she headed toward the kitchen. "I did," Lisa replied, her voice carrying through the house. "And I picked up something extra special that I think you're going to love." That was Maya's cue. She quietly set down her purse and moved toward the kitchen, her heart pounding with anticipation. She paused at the doorway, taking in the scene. Before her, her mother stood at the kitchen island arranging appetizers on a serving platter. At 59, soon to be 60, Olivia Johnson was still a striking woman. Her dark skin glowed with vitality, and though her hair now showed strands of silver among the black, She wore it in the same elegant twists she'd favored all her life. She was dressed simply in slacks and a blouse, unaware that tomorrow's celebration would call for much fancier attire, and there, seated at the kitchen table reviewing what looked like paperwork, was her father. Commander James Johnson's broad shoulders and perfect posture marked him as military even in civilian clothes. Though retired from active field operations, he still served as a training consultant for the Navy, passing on decades of hard-won knowledge to new generations of SEALs. Maya's throat tightened with emotion. It had been nearly 6 months since she'd seen her parents in person. Video calls were a poor substitute for being in the same room, for feeling her mother's arms around her and hearing her father's deep, reassuring voice without digital distortion. "So what's this special thing you picked up?" Olivia was asking Lisa, her back still to the doorway where Maya stood. Lisa grinned. "Turn around and see for yourself." Olivia turned, her eyes widening in shock as she spotted Maya. For a moment, she stood frozen, one hand pressed to her mouth. Then with a cry of joy, she rushed forward, enveloping her younger daughter in a fierce hug. "Maya, oh my goodness, what are you doing here? I thought you couldn't get away from the hospital." Maya hugged her mother back just as tightly, breathing in the familiar scent of her perfume. "Surprise, Mom. You didn't think I'd miss your birthday, did you?" James had risen from his chair at the commotion. Now he stood watching the reunion, a rare full smile lighting his usually serious face. When Olivia finally released Maya, he stepped forward for his turn, wrapping his daughter in a bear hug that lifted her feet off the ground. "Good to see you, Doc," he said, using the nickname he'd given her when she was accepted to medical school. "How long are you here for?" "Until Monday," Maya replied, savoring the security of her father's embrace. No matter how old she got, her dad's hugs still made her feel like nothing in the world could harm her. "I took a long weekend." Olivia wiped happy tears from her eyes. "This is the best early birthday present I could ask for. Having both my girls home at the same time is so rare these days." If only she knew what they had planned for tomorrow, Maya thought. The surprise party would bring together friends and family from throughout Olivia's life, some traveling from across the country to celebrate with her. And now, thanks to a chance encounter on the flight, there would be an unexpected guest with an extraordinary connection to their family. "How was your flight?" James asked as they all moved further into the kitchen. "Any trouble getting away from the hospital?" Maya exchanged a quick glance with Lisa. "The flight was fine. And the hospital, well, let's just say I had to call in some favors, but it was worth it." She deliberately avoided mentioning her carry-on bag or its precious contents. The medal was safely hidden in Lisa's car trunk for now. They would retrieve it later when their parents weren't watching, and hide it with the other gifts for tomorrow's celebration. The family fell into easy conversation around the kitchen island, catching up on the past months as they prepared for what Olivia still believed was a small dinner party that evening. James shared sanitized stories from his latest consulting work. Lisa talked about her job as an architectural engineer, and Maya offered carefully edited anecdotes from the emergency room. It was the comfortable rhythm of a family who knew each other well, who had weathered long separations and joyful reunions, who had learned to make the most of their time together because they understood how precious and fleeting it could be. As they worked, Maya found herself studying her father more closely. Though he'd been retired from active field operations for several years now, James Johnson still moved with the contained power and awareness of a man who had spent decades in the most elite special operations unit in the military. His hair was cropped short in the same style he'd worn all his life, now more salt than pepper. The lines around his eyes had deepened, telling stories of both laughter and hardship. It was strange to think that just hours ago, she had met someone whose life her father had saved, someone who remembered him from a dark night in Afghanistan that James had likely never mentioned to his family. How many other lives had he touched? How many other Derek Chens were out there carrying memories of the tall commander who had appeared when all seemed lost? "Maya?" Her mother's voice broke through her thoughts. "Are you okay, sweetheart? You look like you're a million miles away." Maya smiled, returning to the present moment. "I'm fine, Mom. Just happy to be home." The evening passed in a blur of good food, better conversation, and the simple joy of family togetherness. Later, when their parents had gone to bed, Maya and Lisa snuck out to the car to retrieve the heavy bag containing the silver star. "Where should we hide it?" Maya whispered as they crept back into the house. "In my old room," Lisa replied. "Mom never goes in there. We can put it with the other gifts I've collected." They tiptoed up the stairs, careful to avoid the third step that had creaked for as long as either of them could remember. Once safely in Lisa's childhood bedroom, Maya carefully removed the wrapped display case from her bag. "Do you want to see it?" she asked her sister. "It turned out even better than I expected." Lisa nodded eagerly. Maya unwrapped the package, opening the oak case to reveal the gleaming silver star nestled against its blue velvet background. "Oh, Maya," Lisa breathed, touching the polished wood reverently. "It's beautiful. Mom and Dad are going to love this." "I hope so," Maya said. After what happened today, meeting Derek and learning about his connection to Dad, it feels even more meaningful somehow. Lisa studied her sister's face. "You really invited him to the party? A guy you just met on a plane?" "I know it sounds crazy," Maya admitted. "But if you had seen his face when he recognized Dad's name, it meant something to him, Lisa. Something important." Lisa nodded slowly. "I get it. And I think Mom and Dad will too." She carefully rewrapped the display case and placed it with the other gifts hidden in her closet. "Now we should get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a big day." Morning arrived with perfect weather, clear blue skies and mild temperatures ideal for the outdoor celebration they had planned. The party wasn't scheduled to start until 2 in the afternoon, but preparations began early. The sisters had arranged for a catering team to set up in the backyard, transforming the space with tables, chairs, and decorations, while Olivia was taken out for a birthday breakfast by a friend who was in on the surprise. James, aware of the real plan, helped direct the setup while maintaining regular text contact with Olivia's friend to track their whereabouts. By 1 o'clock, everything was ready. Guests would begin arriving soon, and Olivia was scheduled to return at 2:30, giving everyone time to hide and prepare for the big reveal. Maya was arranging flowers on the gift table when her phone chimed with a text message. It was from Derek. "On my way. Should arrive around 2. Is there anything I can bring?" She smiled at his thoughtfulness and texted back, "Just yourself. We have everything covered. See you soon." At precisely 1:45, the first guests began to arrive. Old friends of Olivia's from her teaching days, neighbors, family members who had traveled from out of state. James greeted everyone warmly, directing them to the backyard where drinks and appetizers awaited. Maya was helping an elderly aunt to her seat when she spotted a familiar figure at the edge of the gathering. Derek had arrived, looking remarkably different out of his flight attendant uniform. Dressed in khaki pants and a light blue button-down shirt, he stood scanning the crowd, clearly unsure where to go. Maya excused herself and went to greet him. "Derek, you made it!" He turned at the sound of her voice, smiling with visible relief at seeing a familiar face. "Maya, hi. This is quite a gathering. Your mother must be very loved." "She is," Maya agreed, leading him toward the refreshment table. "Can I get you something to drink?" "Mom won't be here for about half an hour, so we have time to get you settled." Derek accepted a glass of lemonade, still glancing around somewhat nervously. "I brought a small gift," he said, holding up a neatly wrapped package. "Just a token, really. I hope that's okay." "Of course it is." "That's very thoughtful." Maya took the package and placed it with the others on the gift table. "Are you nervous about meeting my dad?" Derek laughed softly. "Is it that obvious? It's not every day you get to thank someone who saved your life." "He'll be glad to meet you," Maya assured him. "Dad doesn't talk much about his missions, but I know the men he served with meant everything to him. That includes the medical personnel, who were out there with them." She spotted her father across the yard, deep in conversation with her uncle. "There he is. Would you like me to introduce you now before Mom arrives and things get hectic?" Derek took a deep breath and nodded. "Yes, I think that would be best." They made their way through the growing crowd toward James. As they approached, Maya could see her father's face shift from relaxed enjoyment to professional assessment as he noticed the stranger accompanying his daughter. It was a subtle change that most people wouldn't catch. A slight narrowing of the eyes, a barely perceptible straightening of his posture. Old habits died hard for a man who had spent his life evaluating potential threats. "Dad," Maya said when they reached him, "there's someone I'd like you to meet. This is Derek Chen. He was my flight attendant yesterday, but it turns out you two have crossed paths before." James extended his hand politely, though his expression remained curious. "Is that so? Nice to meet you, Derek." Derek shook his hand firmly, the moment clearly significant for him. "The honor is mine, Commander Johnson. Though the last time we met, I didn't get the chance to thank you properly." James's eyebrows rose, slightly. "We've met before?" "Yes, sir," Derek replied. 7 years ago in Afghanistan. I was a Navy corpsman with the 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines. Our patrol was ambushed in the Korangal Valley. 3 Marines were critically wounded. We were pinned down until your SEAL team arrived and secured an extraction. Maya watched as recognition dawned on her father's face. James Johnson had participated in countless operations during his long career, but some missions stayed with you more than others. "I remember that night," he said quietly. "Your unit was in a bad spot. You were working on the wounded when the second wave of fire came in." Derek nodded, emotion evident in his voice. "You and your team created a perimeter around us, gave us the time we needed to stabilize the Marines. You personally carried Lance Corporal Rivera to the extraction point when his buddy took a hit." James's eyes took on a faraway look, seeing not the sunny backyard but a dark, chaotic night half a world away. "Rivera, young kid from Texas, shrapnel wounds to the abdomen and leg." "Yes, sir," Derek confirmed, clearly moved that James remembered such details. "He made it thanks to you. All 3 of them did." A brief silence fell between them, heavy with shared memories of a night when death had seemed certain until it wasn't. Finally, James spoke again. "I never knew what happened to those Marines after the medevac took off, or to you and the rest of the medical team. It's good to know the outcome was positive." "More than positive, sir," Derek said. "I've stayed in touch with Rivera. He's married, now, has 2 kids. Works as a physical therapist helping other veterans. None of that would have happened if you and your team hadn't shown up when you did." James placed a hand on Derek's shoulder, a gesture of connection between 2 men who had seen things most people couldn't imagine. "We all did our jobs that night. You kept those Rhines alive under fire. That took as much courage as anything my team did." Maya watched the interaction with a lump in her throat. Her father rarely spoke about his combat experiences, even in general terms. To hear him acknowledge this specific mission, to see him connect with someone who shared that memory, it was a rare glimpse into a part of his life that had always remained somewhat separate from their family world. The moment was interrupted by Lisa's urgent voice. "Dad, Maya, they're coming. Mom will be here in 5 minutes. Everyone needs to get into position." The quiet intensity of the conversation broke as reality rushed back in. James squeezed Derek's shoulder once more. "We'll talk more later." "Right. Now I need to make sure I'm in place to surprise my wife." Derek nodded in understanding. "Of course, sir, and thank you for allowing me to be part of this day." As James moved away to direct the final preparations for Olivia's arrival, Maya turned to Derek. "You okay?" That seemed intense. Derek took a deep breath, looking somewhat overwhelmed. "Your father remembered specific details about those wounded Marines from a mission 7 years ago. That's something special." "That's Dad," Maya said simply. "He never forgets the people under his protection." She glanced toward the house, where Lisa was frantically waving for everyone to hide. "We should get in position. Mom will be here any minute." They joined the other guests gathering behind tables and chairs ready for the big moment. Maya found herself standing next to Derek as the yard fell silent in anticipation. Through the back windows of the house, they could see Lisa leading. Their mother through the front door, James following behind. I still don't understand why we have to go through the house to see what you've done in the backyard, they heard Olivia saying. Why all the mystery? You'll see, Mom, Lisa replied, guiding her toward the back door. It's part of your birthday. Surprise. As Olivia stepped onto the back porch, 50 voices shouted in unison, Surprise! The look of complete shock on Olivia's face was everything Maya and Lisa had hoped for. Their mother stood frozen, hands clasped to her mouth, taking in the decorated yard, the gathering of friends and family, the banner wishing her a happy 60th birthday. Then the tears came, happy tears streaming down Olivia's face as she turned to her husband and daughters. You planned all this? For me? She managed through her emotion. You deserve it and more, Mom, Maya said, stepping forward to embrace her. As Olivia moved through the crowd, greeting guests with hugs and exclamations of disbelief, Maya caught Derek's eye. He was watching the scene with a warm smile, clearly, moved by the family's joy. In that moment, Maya was certain that inviting him had been the right decision. Some connections were meant to be honored, some circles meant to be completed. What neither of them could have anticipated was how the day's most powerful moment was yet to come, a moment that would begin with a flight attendant lifting a heavy bag and end with a revelation that would leave everyone present in stunned silence. The party was in full swing by mid-afternoon. The caterers circulated with trays of food, music played from hidden speakers, and laughter filled the air as Olivia's friends and family celebrated her special day. Maya watched her mother move from group to group, her face radiant with happiness, as she reconnected with people she hadn't seen in years. Your mom seems to be enjoying herself, Derek commented, appearing at Maya's side with a plate of food. This was a wonderful idea. Lisa deserves most of the credit, Maya replied. She coordinated everything while I was stuck in Boston. All I had to do was show up and bring. She trailed off, glancing toward the gift table where the wrapped display case sat among colorfully packaged presents. Derek followed her gaze. When are you planning to give her the medal? We thought we'd do gifts after the cake, so probably in about an hour. Maya felt a flutter of nervous excitement at the thought. I can't wait to see their faces. They were interrupted by Lisa, who approached with a champagne flute in each hand. Here, she said, offering them drinks. Dad's about to make a toast. The crowd quieted as James Johnson stepped into the center of the gathering. He cut an impressive figure, standing tall in a crisp button-down shirt and slacks, his military bearing evident even in this casual setting. Beside him, Olivia glowed with happiness, her hand tucked into the crook of his arm. James raised his glass, and the yard fell silent. I want to thank everyone for coming today to celebrate this incredible woman. He looked down at his wife with undisguised adoration. Olivia, for 30 years you've been the heart of our family, the steady presence that kept us grounded through deployments and moves, through hard times and good ones. Maya felt a lump form in her throat as her father continued, his usually reserved demeanor softening as he spoke about his wife. When I was away, you were the one holding everything together, raising our girls to be the strong, capable women they are today. You never complained about the life we chose, even when it asked more of you than was fair. Olivia squeezed his arm, her eyes shining with tears. So today, surrounded by the people who love you, I want to say thank you for your strength, your patience, your unwavering support. Here's to 60 years of making this world a better place and to many more years of us facing whatever comes next, together. Glasses were raised around the yard as everyone toasted. To Olivia. Maya wiped a tear from her cheek, moved by her father's words. The Johnson family wasn't typically demonstrative with their emotions, a common trait in military families, who learned to guard their hearts against the pain of separation. But today was different. Today was about celebrating not just Olivia's birthday, but the love and sacrifices that had defined their family for decades. The party continued, flowing seamlessly from toasts to cake to finally gifts. Chairs were arranged in a semicircle, with Olivia seated at the center. Lisa appointed herself gift manager, bringing presents one by one for her mother to open. Maya felt her heart race as the pile of opened gifts grew, and the moment for her special present approached. She caught her sister's eye, and Lisa nodded, understanding the silent communication. It was time. "Mom," Lisa said, setting aside a newly unwrapped scarf. "There's one more special gift. This one is from Maya." All eyes turned to Maya as she stepped forward, suddenly aware of how quiet the yard had become. She took the carefully wrapped package from the table and knelt beside her mother's chair. "This isn't just from me," she said softly. "It's something that belongs to our whole family." Olivia looked at her daughter curiously as she accepted the heavy package. "My goodness, what could this be?" Maya's eyes flickered to her father, who watched with interest, but no suspicion. He had no idea what was about to be revealed. Olivia carefully removed the wrapping paper, revealing the handcrafted oak case. "Oh, this is beautiful," she breathed, running her fingers over the polished wood. "Open it, Mom," Maya encouraged gently. As Olivia lifted the lid, a collective gasp rippled through those closest to her. The silver star metal gleamed against the blue velvet, the afternoon sun catching its polished surface and making it shine like a beacon. Olivia's hand flew to her mouth. "Is this—" She looked up at James, whose expression had transformed from curiosity to utter shock. "Dad's silver star," Maya confirmed. "I had it professionally restored and mounted. The case is made from oak harvested at the Naval Academy." James stepped forward, his face a complex mixture of emotions. "How did you— That metal was in my—" He stopped suddenly, realization dawning. "You took it from the case in our bedroom." Maya nodded. "Mom helped. We told you the display case was being repaired locally, but I actually took it to a specialist in Boston. I wanted to preserve it properly, to honor what it means to our family." James knelt beside his wife, looking at the metal that represented one of the most challenging moments of his military career. His fingers hovered over it, almost afraid to touch the gleaming surface. "It's beautiful," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I haven't seen it shine like this since the day it was presented." Olivia looked from the metal to her husband, tears streaming freely down her face. "All these years," she said, "this metal has been a symbol of our love story, the promise that you would always come home to me." The guests watched in respectful silence, many wiping away tears of their own as they witnessed this intensely personal family moment. Derek stood slightly apart from the group, deeply moved by the scene before him. Then something unexpected happened. As James reached to close the display case, his eyes fell on the small engraved plate inside. He read the inscription, which told the story of how he had given the medal to Olivia before their marriage, as a promise to always return to her. James looked up at Maya, a question in his eyes. "How did you know this story? We never told you girls about this." "Mom told me when I asked to restore the medal," Maya replied. "I wanted the engraving to capture what it really means to our family." James turned to his wife, a lifetime of shared memories passing between them in a single look. Then, to everyone's surprise, he removed the medal from its case. "Stand up, love," he said softly to Olivia. She rose, confusion mingling with the tears in her eyes. James took her hand, the medal gleaming between them. 30 years ago, I gave you this medal as a promise. Today, on your 60th birthday, I give it to you again." His voice, usually so controlled, wavered slightly. "Not as a promise for the future, but as a thank you for the past, for every time you waited for me to come home, for every burden you carried alone when I couldn't be there, for raising our daughters with strength and grace when I was half a world away." The yard was absolutely silent now, every guest frozen in place, witnessing a moment of such raw emotion that it felt almost intrusive to watch. James continued, his eyes never leaving Olivia's. "This medal was awarded for one act of courage. But you, Olivia Johnson, have shown more courage every single day of our life together than I ever did on that mission. The bravery it takes to love a soldier, to create a home that can withstand constant change, to raise children who understand both sacrifice and joy. That's the real valor. He pressed the medal into her palm, closing her fingers around it. "So this belongs to you. It always has." Olivia could barely speak through her tears. She looked down at the medal in her hand, then back at her husband. "James," she whispered, "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," he replied, drawing her into an embrace. The yard erupted in applause. The guests moved beyond words by the beautiful exchange they had just witnessed. Maya found herself crying openly, overwhelmed by the depth of her parents' love and the unexpected way her gift had been received. Derek watched from a respectful distance, his own eyes damp. Seeing Commander Johnson, the fierce warrior he remembered from that night in Afghanistan, express such tender emotion was profoundly affecting. It completed his understanding of the man who had saved his life, showing him not just the soldier but the husband and father. As the emotional moment gradually subsided and guests began to talk among themselves again, Derek decided it was time for him to discreetly depart. He had witnessed something beautiful and personal, had seen the completion of a circle that began with an act of valor and continued through decades of love and family bonds. His presence had served its purpose. He was making his way toward Maya to say goodbye when a commotion at the gate caught everyone's attention. A man in a wheelchair had arrived, accompanied by a woman and 2 young children. The newcomer looked around uncertainly until his eyes landed on Derek. "Chen!" he called out. "Is that you?" Derek froze, recognition dawning on his face. "Rivera!" he gasped. "What are you doing here?" The man wheeled himself forward, grinning broadly. "When you texted me yesterday that you'd met Commander Johnson's daughter and were invited to a family gathering, I couldn't believe it. I had to come, had to see for myself." Maya looked between Derek and the newcomer, understanding blooming. "You're Lance Corporal Rivera," she said. "The Marine my dad carried to safety that night in Afghanistan." Rivera nodded, his eyes seeking out James Johnson in the crowd. When he spotted him standing with his arm still around Olivia, Rivera straightened in his wheelchair as much as he could, almost instinctively coming to attention. "Commander," he said, his voice carrying across the yard. James turned, his expression shifting from confusion to shock as he recognized the man addressing him. "Rivera," he said, stepping forward. "Miguel Rivera." The party guests parted, creating a path between the 2 men. James moved forward slowly, his eyes never leaving Rivera's face. When he reached the wheelchair, he knelt down to be at eye level with the former Marine. "You made it home," James said simply. Rivera nodded, emotion evident on his face. "Thanks to you, sir, and to Corpsman Chen here." He gestured toward Derek. "When he told me yesterday he'd met your daughter on a flight and learned who her father was, I had to come. My wife said I talked about nothing else all night." He introduced the woman and children standing beside him, his family, the future he might never have had if not for the events of that night 7 years ago. James looked from Rivera to Derek, then back to Rivera. "I didn't know," he said. "After the medevac took off, we continued the mission. I never knew what happened to you, to any of the wounded from that night." "I looked for you," Rivera admitted. "After I recovered, wanted to thank you personally. But you know how it is with SEAL operations, no records I could access, no way to track you down." James nodded in understanding. The classified nature of his work had often created such barriers, leaving loose ends untied, stories unfinished. "And then yesterday," Rivera continued, "my old corpsman texted me out of the blue saying he met Commander Johnson's daughter on a flight to Atlanta, said he'd been invited to a family gathering. It felt like fate, sir, like things coming full circle." Olivia had joined them now, the Silver Star medal still clutched in her hand. "Please," she said warmly, "join us. Any friend of James's, anyone whose life he touched, you're welcome here." The party resumed with a new energy, the unexpected reunion adding another layer of meaning to the day's celebrations. Guests gathered around Rivera, listening to his story of that night in Afghanistan, of his long recovery, of how he'd built a new life helping other veterans through physical therapy. Maya found herself standing with Derek, watching as her father talked animatedly with Rivera, the two men connected by an experience that had marked them both profoundly. "Did you know he was coming?" she asked Derek quietly. Derek shook his head, still looking somewhat dazed. "I texted him yesterday after I met you, told him about the incredible coincidence. I never imagined he'd show up today." "I'm glad he did," Maya said. "Look at Dad's face. I've never seen him like this, talking so openly about his service." It was true. James Johnson had always kept his military experiences separate from his family life, sharing only sanitized stories and general details. But now, surrounded by his loved ones and faced with living proof of a life he had helped save, the barriers seemed to be coming down. Olivia approached them, the metal display case in her hands. "Maya," she said, embracing her daughter. "What an incredible gift you've given us today. Not just this beautiful restoration, but these connections." She gestured toward Rivera and his family. "Seeing the impact your father had on these lives, it's beyond words." She turned to Derek. "And you, young man, meeting you on that flight was no accident, I believe. You were meant to be part of this day." Derek smiled, clearly touched by her words. "It's been an honor, Mrs. Johnson. Your husband is a legend among those of us who served with him, even briefly. But seeing him here with his family, with you, it completes the picture in a way I never expected." As the afternoon lengthened into evening, the party took on a quality of magic that none of the guests would soon forget. The planned celebration had transformed into something more profound, a tapestry of connections revealed, of lives intertwined through service and sacrifice, of promises kept and stories completed. When it was finally time for guests to depart, Maya stood with her family at the gate, saying goodbye to each person who had shared in this extraordinary day. Rivera and his family were among the last to leave, with promises exchanged to stay in touch, to not let these renewed connections fade away again. Derek was the final guest remaining. He shook James's hand firmly, the two men now bound by a shared understanding that went beyond their brief intersection in combat. "Thank you, sir," Derek said simply. "Not just for that night, but for all of it. For showing us what it means to serve with honor, and to love with the same dedication." James nodded, accepting the words with characteristic humility. "Safe travels, Chen, and remember, you're always welcome in our home." As Derek turned to leave, Maya walked with him to the sidewalk. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the suburban street. "I never expected any of this when I offered to help you with your bag yesterday," Derek said, shaking his head in wonder. Maya smiled. "Sometimes the heaviest things we carry contain the most important connections." Derek nodded in agreement. "Your father's medal brought us together, and then brought Rivera here today. It's like that medal has its own gravity, pulling people,